Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Killeen, brought to you by KDH News. I'm your host, Kevin Limberty, the Metro Editor and City Government Reporter here, and I'm joined by Louie Minor, County Commissioner for Precinct 4 for Bell County.
Welcome, welcome.
And Jessica Gonzalez, the Councilwoman for the City of Killeen, representing District 1.
Hello, thank you for having me.
All right. And today we're going to talk about a couple of things, namely federal funding cuts, which has impacted the City of Killeen and has also impacted Bell County. And also we're going to talk a little bit about the Big Beautiful Bill and how that has impacted Killeen residents, or will impact Killeen residents and Bell County residents in the future. Now, let me just start off by talking about some of the federal funding cuts. Louie, what is your sense walking into some of the problems that have just, the unpredictability of some of these funding cuts and what they mean for Bell County?
Well, the big ugly bill, as it's I'm going to refer to it. It's just doing drastic cuts all across the board and increasing the deficit while doing it. So they're cutting services to the most needy and communities that have the most need, and funneling tax breaks to the wealthy. So what does that mean locally? It means that we're going to have less money for infrastructure projects, less money for medical health care for our indigent community here in the county, and it means cuts to SNAP. So we're going to have people going hungry.
Can I add that it's also
sure.
going to affect affordable housing, and it's also going to affect our local tax, or have an impact on our local tax
Absolutely
revenue.
it will. Absolutely it will. Because we're going to have to make up that difference here to meet that need in one way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. And can you already see that in the way things are kind of being rolled out in terms of the City of Killeen's budget and what Bell County as a whole has to deal with? Have you guys seen anything like that you think, oh wow, this is definitely not just an isolated incident?
Well, what we're watching very closely is, again, the grants, right, that affect our home, our art programs, we see cuts happening to organizations such as our Boys and Girls Club, but there's the grant impact, I think, is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm very concerned there, especially because of the ratio of our people that are using the grants. I think they said in Bell County, and you can confer if I'm wrong, or can correct me if I'm wrong, are we at 14% of people that are actually receiving housing disability or Medicare or food stamps? Is it 14% of our population?
I don't have that exact number as far as
I'd be curious
housing.
to know, right?
I think the housing, all that goes through SITCOG.
Right, and the SNAP benefits, we're in uncharted territory, so just really trying to keep an eye on all of the potentials. There's a lot of guessing here as far as how deep that impact is going to affect us.
The Central Texas Food Bank, came to the Commissioner's Court and gave a presentation. And last year, 78,000 residents in Bell County accessed the food bank. So they expect that to grow, that need to grow, but their funding is getting cut. And that funding not only hurts families, it also hurts farmers, because where is this food coming from? They're buying it from the local farms. So, you're having that double impact of, hurting farmers and families.
Yeah, and it's kind of strange because, at the same time they're cutting SNAP, they're also, it would put a burden on the food banks. I mean, if the food banks weren't under pressure already enough, I've done articles that show that the Central Texas Food Bank has been under immense strain due to cuts that are unrelated to the Big Beautiful Bill, but it's just everything seems to compound, And I was looking at a statistic from the Census Bureau. It said that more than 70% of Killeen residents live below the poverty line. So that means that they're going to be they could potentially be impacted by cuts to SNAP, and at least according to some studies. I mean, it's amazing how varied like the different points of view are. But in any case, some studies say that they're going to be impacted far more on the negative side by the bill, as opposed to, say, like the upper brackets of income, which will receive mostly a positive outcome. Is that your guys' understanding as well?
Well, I mean, the losses to Medicaid, Medicare in Texas, it's estimated $39 billion, that we're going to lose. That's going to increase our uninsured population by 770,000 here in Texas. So that responsibility of indigent health care falls to the county. So right now we're required by law to dedicate 8% of our total budget to indigent health care. When we max that out, then it goes to uncompensated care. So you always hear when you go to the hospital, they can't refuse service. That's called uncompensated care. And last year in Bell County, we had $180 million in uncompensated care. So that's the true cost of indigent health care, uncompensated care in the county. You add those two numbers up, it's almost $200 million. And with these cuts, it's going to affect hospitals and it's going to affect county. And we're going to have to make up that need.
And then on the other side of this, one of the questions that I'm still pending some additional information on is the potential impact for municipal finance. And so while they're saying that it's going to generally maintain the tax exempt status of like the municipal bonds, changes to tax provisions, they are saying there's a potential for local governments to affect the bond market, right? So there's on the surface, it doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking about long-term projects, infrastructure projects, and how they could be impacted by this. There's still a lot of uncertainty. Now, I don't like dealing in uncertainty because I'm getting asked questions left and right about this process. I did reach out to our local representatives just for some clarity on the language and some things. I was on a conference call, and unfortunately I was not provided that information to be more prepared for you here today, and I do apologize about that. So hopefully those that are listening can hear that our citizens are actually concerned about what's happening in the Bell County area, in the Killeen area, and how good, bad, or indifferent we may be impacted by this, and they're asking real relevant questions that I think deserve answers.
Yeah, and make no mistake that the state house, the state legislature, they're attacking local government. They're trying to control everything in Austin, and how they're doing that is trying to cap local municipalities and counties from their taxing authority. So there was a provision this last legislative session that any tax increase would require voter approval. Right now, it's 3.5% that counties and cities could go up to without getting voter approval. They want to do any increase above the no new revenue rate to be voter approved. We're not going to be able to function like that. There's just no way. I mean, we have enough trouble now meeting the needs of our communities and staying, within that 3.5%. So, those are the things that the state is doing that's really going to be hurting counties. And that's one of the legislative priorities in this special session is taxing, local entity taxing. So that's something I know the city is probably going to be monitoring very closely, something that the county is going to be monitoring very closely. The Texas Association of Counties, they're opposed to that, any type of, I guess, changing of the laws that would affect us, taxing up to the 3.5%.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot going down the pipeline at the special session coming up soon. Jessica, you mentioned you reached out to some representatives. Do you mind if I ask who?
It's Austin Pfluger, our representative for Congressional District 11. I've requested some information in writing and some clarity in some of the language just to get some some, like I said, clarity on some of that language and how it would impact us. Again, good, bad, or indifferent. If there are some positives, we want to know them. The negatives, we definitely need to know them. And this is so that we can prepare our citizens for whatever outcome might be coming their way. We owe that to them, and we need that information for clarity's sake.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a lot of the common refrain that I hear from people is that it's just unexpected. I didn't, like it's part of the unknown. I mean, how do you guys deal with that?
Well, I mean, for me, it's on a case-by-case basis. Citizens, all this is in the abstract to them. It's just words on a paper, it's headlines that they might see on TikTok or Facebook, but until it affects them, that's when it gets real. And then that's where they start coming to us. Where do I go for help? Where do I go for assistance? My lights are going to get cut off. I can't afford, gas to get to work. Those are the things that we hear about, and we got to try and find solutions for. And it's hard to connect that to Washington sometimes, and to let people understand, like, this is happening because of Washington or Austin. But that's the job that we have to do, is to inform my constituents.
That's right. There's real world implications for the decisions that are made at those levels. They impact us directly. And so we, like to Commissioner Minor's point, we have to be able to not only connect those dots, but again, be proactive in our understanding of where we're supposed to go for those resources. When you start talking about potential substantial amounts of funding loss when it comes to Department of Transportation, cuts to the safety, social safety programs, we're talking about the SNAP and those types of programs, what you've just given as far as your stats in our area alone, it's going to have a significant impact on our citizens. What do we tell them to do when the time comes? This is not to, again, I always say not to be panicked, but to be prepared, right? We have to be proactive in this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you find it challenging to try to communicate with residents some of the problems that are coming down from well, I shouldn't say problems, but that's a perception. But some of these potential issues that, whether intended or unintended, are coming from Washington D.C. or the state.
Rephrase your question for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was wondering if it was difficult to communicate with residents from your positions as to some of the cuts and some of the problems that are coming from the federal government and and to some extent from the state.
So I wouldn't say it's necessarily difficult. The challenge for me, and that's what we keep kind of reiterating that point, for me is not having the facts or exactly how this is going to affect them directly in their situation. Everything is, like you said, kind of abstract. It's kind of out there. We don't really have we have an idea, we have a projected estimation, but there is no specifics right now, and so that's where the frustration is lying right now for a lot of the folks that I'm engaging. But they're very savvy. People are paying attention, most definitely, and I'm loving that. They're watching the area nonprofits, even if they're not impacted directly by receiving certain benefits. They are watching organizations that provide them and jumping in to write letters to Congress and write letters to officials that can help. So people are definitely paying attention. The tricky part for me right now is just having an answer of what do we do. How is this going to impact me directly? There's a lot of uncertainty there.
And, governments, we have a limited amount of resources. So picking the priorities, that's what I depend on the citizens to tell me. What do you want us to prioritize? Is it housing? Is it infrastructure? Is it food? Is it transportation? We're making these decisions now, and that's where citizens need to reach out to us. But we need to be out there too in the community. I held a budget town hall. I do podcasts. I do Facebook Live. I do all these things that try to engage with my constituents, so I know what their priority is and try to fund that priority.
Yeah, and groups like Killeen Creators do such good work in the community, and now they're not able to. They might even shut down because of the federal cuts, and it, you know, it's hard to like imagine like having like a society where there's no kind of benefit that doesn't, because cities can't necessarily take up the slack for all of this, and I think the same goes for the county as well. A lot of it's going to have to come from federal. So much stuff comes from federal, and I don't know how much people really understand that.
Well, I mean, look what they're doing now. They're trying to kill Big Bird, and do away with public broadcasting and doing away with NPR. And
just recently a bill was passed.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to take billions of dollars out of that. I listened to the KUT station out of Austin, the NPR affiliate, and I love what they do. And I grew up watching Sesame Street, and that's a shame that that's a Republican priority, is to do away with these staples in our society.
And that leads us back to it takes a village. What happens then to our communities as an impact of these challenges and these changes? Like you said, the cities can only do so much. Then our funding relies on our taxes and federal grants and things like that. And if those are going away, or they're being challenged or affected negatively, county is being affected in that respect, then where does that leave our constituency? Do we have to then figure out other ways for like organizations like one you mentioned within the community to be able to sustain them, right? It's going to take our neighbors, it's going to take our churches, it's going to take related organizations that deal with specialties, whether it's dealing with homelessness or low income or helping people transition back into the workforce. We're really going to have to rely on the community effort at that point. Still, what does that look like, and how does that work? We're not quite there yet, but I do think it's a conversation worth having.
Yeah, I remember particularly there was a discussion recently, maybe a couple weeks ago at the Killeen City Council, about the co-responder program for KPD, and that's a program that is very important because I mean, especially considering how many high profile shootings have happened that were in part caused by mental illness, and it just seems like it's a very necessary thing to have somebody who is able to respond to something like that, who is maybe not a police officer. So that program would have funded the salary or partial salary of a social worker to respond to some of these calls. And from my understanding, that was one of the reasons that was cut was because of cuts from the federal government, and that's a public safety issue. That's not even so much of an issue of an entitlement program or anything like that. So it has a slightly different flavor, and the Killeen police chief, I'm sure, is very much in favor of having something like that. Right. So
yeah, he's on the record for sure. And then one of the other things, and this is again where we're kind of in that gray area, where it's being mentioned at the federal level about cutting the crime victims assistance funding. So how is that going to impact us on the state level? How is that going to impact us on the local level? When are these to go into effect? So right now, it's pretty much a wait and see game there, but that would be detrimental not only to victims who are receiving that compensation, but also organizations who provide a service to the people that are receiving those benefits. So it's definitely something we have to watch. So we're watching a lot of areas right now, trying to track to make sure that we are on top of how this is going to impact our constituency, so we can be prepared to answer those questions, as Commissioner Minor said, when they start coming our way, because they're going to be looking to us to have some sort of resolution, some sort of resource, and some sort of direction. And so we need to be able to prepare ourselves for that.
Yeah, it almost seems redundant how often the issue comes up nowadays.
Right.
And, SNAP is another thing. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's hard to imagine not having something like that accessible by people who in the past were able to access it. I mean, Bell County, from data that I looked up last I checked, had almost 50,000 people who utilize SNAP. And I know you've talked about food stamps and the impact it was going to have on the food banks. I mean, is there anything that people can prepare for in terms of like this issue?
Well, it's going to fall on local governments that we're going to have to shore up the need. But it doesn't help when you have a governor that cuts the summer lunch school program, $40 million, something like that, that we're going to go to hungry children here in this state to feed them, and the governor vetoed that. So what are these priorities that they're trying to do? Have a uneducated, underinsured, unemployed community? I just don't understand what their priorities are, other than to funnel tax dollars to the wealthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are asking the same question. But then again, maybe if I can offer like a counter narrative here, because some people have been saying that there have been good things about the Big Beautiful Bill. For one thing, it increases the child tax credit. It eliminates tax on tips, but all these things have like strings attached to them. But I mean, but there are people out there saying that this is a good thing.
There are a few good things in there. I'm not gonna just count that. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. Those are good things for those workers and people receiving Social Security. But the few good things in there don't outweigh all the wrong in it.
And in terms of like infrastructure, in the city of Killeen, there's always a lot of complaints about roads and such. Jessica, do you think some of these federal cuts are going to disappoint people that want to see like additional support for like some of these major projects?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, there's a real possibility that those funds could be negatively impacted. I don't have that as confirmation, but it is something that we have to watch and have to have that conversation realistically, because if it does, or if for some reason funds that were allocated or drawn back or cut off, where does it come from? How do we continue those projects realistically? Where does that funding come from? And as those that have been following along with the City of Killeen's, some of our challenges as it relates to certain tax exemptions that are impacting us and impacting our community, we have a lot to think about and a lot to really realistically have these conversations about, to make sure that we're preparing ourselves so that we can prepare our citizens for best and worst case scenario.
Yeah, and for infrastructure, part of the special session is flooding
That's right.
sources. So I know our next Commissioners Court meeting, we're going to talk about the hazard mitigation plan and specifically flooding, and start identifying what is that dollar amount that the county is going to need to improve our flood response and flood monitoring here in the county. Just preliminary, I think it's probably going to be around $20 million. But that's something that we need to have in place, have identified, because if the state's going to allocate money for that, then the county and I think the city, we need to be prepared to apply and get that assistance.
Yeah, I mean especially in light of recent events, I mean you can't deny that that's going to be a problem. I mean, even in Killeen, it's not the same as what happened in Kerrville, but there was some flooding, and it's a big deal, and a lot of people care about that here, because I can't count how many times it's been brought up at like these rezoning meetings, like the Planning and Zoning Commission. Like it's just a constant concern, drainage, flooding. So Anyways, what do you guys have coming down the pipeline that you maybe would want to plug? Louie, do you have anything interesting coming up?
No, I just think, we're seeing what falls out of the special session. They're talking about redistricting. So we're, most likely, I'm sure, Killeen has always been gerrymandered. I'm sure they're going to try and gerrymander us again. But I'm planning on being down in Austin. I'm gone next week for a conference. The special session starts next week on the 21st, July 21st. But after that, whenever I get back, I plan on dedicating a significant amount of my time being at the Capitol and advocating for Bell County and Killeen.
Yeah, you mentioned redistricting. That's always you might say not as exciting as some other topics, but it's super important for people
It is.
to be aware of.
It is, absolutely. And it affects our representation, it affects our funding, and since I remember, I don't think Bell County has ever been totally represented by one representative. It's always been cut up.
That's right.
So hopefully we can at least keep Bell County intact, so we can have a single representative for our area.
Mm-hmm. Councilwoman Gonzalez, do you have anything coming up that you might want to talk about?
So I'm working with several different community groups and a couple of different organizations that are really trying to find some alternative solutions to our unhoused population. And so we've had some great conversations and some very close opportunities for some breakthrough. So right now we're working on that and keeping an eye on the tax credits and other ways in which that we can take advantage of working on our unhoused and keeping our low-income housing affordable and creating affordable options. So those are my two tasks that I'm working on right now.
All right, that sounds great. And of course, next week there's also the public hearing on the proposed 2026 budget, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's going to be something that KDH News is going to be covering pretty heavily. Well, I really want to thank you guys for coming. Thank you, Commissioner Minor. Thank you, Councilwoman Gonzalez.
You're welcome.
My name is Kevin Limity, and this is Inside Killeen. It was produced by Hamida Bachway. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.